Trebje se demonstrira.
Agresija je završena.
Nemojte da mislite da nećete odvesti pošačen
Gospodin Karadžić više niko neće više niko možda ostaviti.
Republika Hrvatska proglašuje samostalnom i suverenom državom.
Türkiye'den daha büyüktür. Ufkumuzu 782 bin kilometre kareyle sınırlandıramayız.
Hello, dear listeners. This is Jakub Horvat with Balkan Chronicles podcast. It's lovely to have you, everyone, on air, and especially it is lovely to have yet again a fantastic expert on the Balkans. This one, it's a new expert, a new guy, and my good friend Márton Nikowitz-Holló. It's lovely to have you. Well, I can brief you and our listeners on who you are, but you know yourself the best. Please tell us where you come from and something about yourself.
Hello, listeners. Thank you, Jakub. It's my great pleasure to be here today. So I'm from Budapest. I'm Hungarian, and I have long experience regarding Western Balkans issues, as I was trying to dealing with this topic from my university time. I speak Serbian and Croatian languages as well, and working in the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs of Hungary, and also spent 5 years in Pristina, the Hungarian embassy, as a diplomat. So and now I'm a senior research fellow in the Hungarian Institute for International Affairs, dealing as well with Western Balkans issues on the daily basis. So that's my great pleasure to talk about it anytime.
It's fantastic. Your experience speaks for you. You spent 5 years in Kosovo, and I think it's a good thing that today we will discuss Kosovo.
Yeah, sure. Kosovo is a very interesting topic. I guess it's always keep us busy.
We covered Kosovo last year regarding the current political crisis, which is still ongoing, and we want to brief you on how it has developed since. A bit of explainer. Last year, Kosovo held parliamentary election in February, where no party gained a majority in the parliament. There had to be a rerun of the elections in December, where Kurti's party LVV came on top. It has secured a majority in the parliament, but unfortunately this government collapsed because the parliament failed to elect president March of this year, and because of this there needed to be yet another election, so that is 3 elections in 1.5 years, and again no party managed to gain majority. So this is a bit of our groundwork, and please, our expert, explain us a bit more how this has happened, why the system is as it is regarding president, and so what is the future for the youngest country in Europe?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there is a very long political crisis, and unfortunately it seems that it's ongoing. There is still no solution of this crisis. That means you mentioned those 3 elections. Last February it was the regular elections. That's important to mention, I guess, that the Albin Kurti's government was the first in the history of Kosovo which fulfilled that 4 years mandate, and that's important to understand and to see the political circumstances. Before Kurti's second government, you should know there was a first one, but for a very short period of time. But before, there have been these 3 kind of old parties: PDK, LDK, and AAK. We call them old parties, as they call in Kosovo as well. And always they have been ruling the politics in Kosovo. So Kurti was quite new incomer, and he successfully broke that 3 previous ruling party, and now we can see the consequences. So that means that, as maybe many people have been unsatisfied with Kurti's government in the last 4 years, they are still unsatisfied with the current opposition parties. You can see that the turnout was quite low at the latest election as well. And
yes, it was just 37%, the lowest ever turnout in Kosovo's history.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that people are somehow a little bit bored about the local politics and this political crisis, and some of them judging the Kurti-led Vetvendosia, some of them judging the opposition parties for this situation. But in the end of the day, you can see that most of the Kosovo citizens are unsatisfied with the whole situation. I guess we should talk about a little bit more is the presidential elections itself, because anyone out from Kosovo, that system would be interesting, and we should talk about a little bit about the presidential elections and how could the president collapse the government itself.
Yes, it's important to mention that president in Kosovo is not elected by the citizens, but is elected by the parliament, and there is a unique system in Kosovo, basically where the presidential elections needs to confirm also the future status of the parliament, because if the president is not elected, then the parliamentaries would have to be elected again. So it is a system created to be very robust, and needs to have a lot of faith in the coalitions. But you can get into detail on how does it work.
Yeah, so there is 3 rounds for the presidential election. In the first 2 rounds, 2/3 is needed, but in the 3rd round, simple majority is enough to vote the president, but there should be the 2/3 of the MPs in the assembly, in the whole. So it's clearly seen that it's very easy to kind of veto against to elect the president. That's enough if a party decided not to be present.
Yes, so just MPs don't have to show up to elect the president, and then basically they can ruin the game, and the president is not elected and a new parliament has to be chosen. Yes. So it's very easy to block the formation of any government.
Yes, I guess in the beginning, so when Kosovo became an independent country and the new constitution had been written, the official goal have been to ensure the democratic values, and that's, if you see, it's a very democratic way to elect the president, so it just needs some kind of consensus between the parties. But in the end of the day, unfortunately, the whole society in Kosovo is divided, and there is a huge division between political parties as well, between the old parties and Vetvendosia. So that's why the presidential election last time failed again. So
yes, it was in March of this year. And what was the president at that time?
Yeah, Vjosa Osmani was the president, and that's very interesting that there have been some polls that who is the most popular politician in Kosovo, and that was Vjosa Osmani that time. That's important to mention that in the beginning of the second Kurti's government, when Vjosa Osmani was elected to president, Kurti and Osmani have been kind of allies. So they were working closely together, and their goals were almost the same, the political goals and how their point of view about foreign policy, internal issues. There have been many similarities, but somehow in the end of Kurti's mandate, there have been kind of broke out between them, and till that time the presidential election was held, their personal relations went really down. So it was impossible to re-elect Osmani. Kurti stated openly that he's against.
Yes, but Kurti went even one more step forward, that not even that he would not endorse Vjosa Osmani as president, but the only candidate he put forward was of his choosing, a hardcore loyalist of Vetevendossi party, and he did not consult the opposition on that candidate, even though Kurti knew that he would need opposition MPs on board. So basically they boycotted Kurti's guy, and this is what led to current stalemate.
Yeah, but what you mentioned is very important, because I guess all party have a responsibility about the current political situation in Kosovo. So no one was open for any kind of real consensus. And that's a really bad sign for democracy itself.
But it's a very idealistic approach to create your democracy around the idea that politicians will agree eventually. We have experienced in the case of Montenegro, for example, that just one vote very often made or unmade government, and there were ad hoc temporary governments in the meanwhile. But in the end, having at least some sort of government helps the country to move forward, and being in a stalemate for 1.5 years does not bode well at all.
Yeah, and the main problem is that without political consensus and without government, Kosovo's positions are weakened in the international field. And we all know that Kosovo is facing with unrecognition and many international challenges because of this. So the current situation is just worsen the stance of the state in the international field.
Yes, so Kosovo applied to join the EU, so I guess any progress in that regard is on hold, as the MPs cannot enact any laws, and the government, basically technical government, cannot implement anything. For example, what are any outstanding issues regarding, for example, EU funding for Kosovo's stability?
Unfortunately, it seems most probably Kosovo will lose the sources from the growth plan. And, for a country with underdeveloped infrastructure, that would be crucial to get these funds.
How much was allocated for Kosovo?
If I'm right, it was 600 million euros.
It would be the second country in the Balkans which would fail to receive these funds because of political instability. The first was Bosnia and Herzegovina last year, where the composition government failed to agree on the implementation on a growth plan, and they missed on €500 million.
Yeah, as now we can see, the EU started to use the growth plan as some kind of benefit could give for the region if they are following the road to the EU integration. So just not a long time ago happened in Serbia that the EU had a statement that Serbia would not get some sources for the growth plan because they didn't implemented some reforms in the judiciary system.
Yes, it works in that way that first the funding is stopped, and if it is not resolved within a certain time frame, usually a year, then basically the money is lost, because in the next budgetary season they are eligible for another payment, so basically they lose it for that period of time.
Yeah, so that's why it would be the interest both for the candidate countries and both for the EU to solve those problems that could lead for the losing of this crucial money for the Western Balkans countries.
Yes, and Kosovo is facing currently a couple of issues. Well, as you said, recognition is of course paramount for Kosovo. It is still not recognized by all of the EU member states, and it is not recognized within world institutions and multilateral institutions, and it has a long way ahead. Another crisis is a demographic one. I read a couple of numbers before the interview. In the census conducted in around 2010, so about the time when Kosovo emerged as the newest country in Europe. It had 1.7 million citizens, and according to latest census a couple of years ago, it was just 1.5. So the country basically lost 200,000 people, even though it has one of the youngest populations in Europe, just on average 35 years old, and it has a positive birth rate, so more people are born than they die, but there is a huge immigration issue. So a lot of people from Kosovo are leaving to more developed countries of Europe, which is understandable, and everyone after all wants economic success, which leads to personal success and etc. And people feel that this is not for granted in Kosovo.
Yeah, as I know, in the last couple of years there was a serious change regarding the trends. So in the previous time, most of the cases, one or two boys from a family went abroad, most probably to Germany or to Switzerland, Austria, to work and sending money back home for the whole family. But they have been there alone, and there was a change that now most of the cases those young men goes alone, but after a while when they settled down, earned enough money, they took their family with them to live together. That's because of some economical reasons, social reasons, and as well many mentioning that is because of the poor condition of the health and education system of Kosovo. They want to provide their children and their family members better services in this sense. So yeah, there are some villages in Kosovo, and those are almost totally empty because of these huge waves of immigration. And what hits the Kosovo economy itself in the previous time, the diaspora send money back to the country.
It's called remittances, I believe.
Yeah, it
very important source of income for
absolutely.
Kosovo.
There have been some years where this money came from the diaspora was equal with the whole budget for the money for a year. And now if you see the numbers, still the amount of money going back is almost the same, but if you count it person, you can realize it just because of the increasing number of the diaspora. So the money per person sent it back to Kosovo is decreasing, but because of the number of the Kosovars working abroad is increasing, that's why that amount is still on the same level. But otherwise in a couple of years for sure it will decrease, and that means it will have very negative consequences on Kosovo's economic and social system.
Yeah, so that is two crises basically which are very much interconnected. What is the current state of Belgrade-Pristina dialogue regarding the future agreement on the statehood of Kosovo?
Unfortunately, the time of Kurti's second government, in the beginning there have been some meetings and talks, but slowly the whole procedure has been stopped. So that's almost a frozen situation. There have been no high-level bilateral meetings in the last years. So that means there is no progress in the reality.
Yes, this is something I would stop you and let's leave it for a separate topic, because it's one of the outstanding issues of the Western Balkans, the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, and not many people know that actually there is a pretty sizable and important minority of Serbs living in Kosovo who have their own institutions which are run from Serbia, but also need to work with Kosovar institutions, and they have their own political parties which make up pretty significant portion of MPs, and how they work within the system. It's a fascinating world on its own, and I already hire you for this episode for the future, but it is worth doing alone, I believe.
Yeah, totally agree with you. You know, the Kosovo Serbs issue, it's I guess, one of the most complicated in the Balkans. Maybe Bosnia is the only one is more complicated itself. But after the war in Kosovo, from that time till nowadays, or till maybe 2021, there have been some kind of peace or calm, more or less calm situation. There have been some pogroms in 2004, so that was a very bad issue happened. But in the last couple of years, there have been kind of, how to tell you in the proper way, let them living. So that was the official policy from Pristina towards the Serbs. But from that time, Kurti became prime minister of Kosovo, everything changed. That Kurti was the first Albanian politician from a very long time who wanted to increase the sovereignty of Pristina to the north of Kosovo as well.
This is where the Serbs live.
Yeah. Exactly. In Kosovo there are 10 municipalities with Serbian majority, but North Kosovo contains 4 municipalities that's more than 90% live by Serbs. So that means, and there is North Mitrovica, which one is kind of capital of the Serbs in Kosovo. And Kosovo itself was working like kind of little Serbia, with Serbian institutions, Serbian flags on the buildings, Serbian language as an official one, the Serbian dinar as the official currency. So that means Serbs were living there more or less like in Serbia.
But this has changed quite significantly in the last 5 or 6 years especially.
Yeah, because the Pristina government, Kurti's government exactly started to implement some new laws, new regulations. For example, they made a law against the Serbian dinar. So the only official currency in Kosovo officially is the euro.
It's very funny that Kosovo, a country which is not recognized by EU member states, is actually euro. But it is a similar case as it's in Montenegro, that they are using the currency, but they are not part of the Eurozone or the monetary system of EU, obviously.
Yeah, that's always a little bit fun, but that's it. So,
but let's leave the Serbs for next time. This is really worth doing separately on its own. Let's come back a bit to the latest elections, the preliminary elections, which were held on June the 7th. So the turnout was very low, just 37%. People didn't show that much interest. We are, I think, still waiting for the official results because the Kosovars living abroad, the diaspora has not voted completely. And what were the specific results? Do you have the numbers in mind? Like for the opposition parties, for Vetvendosje, for Albin Kurti's party, and I can mention the minorities.
Yep, for the Vetvendosje, as you mentioned, it's still not the official results, so they are predicted that maybe 1 or 2 mandates could be changed in the end of the day because of the diaspora votes. But if we see now that Vetvendosje got 43% of the votes, PDK, this is the Democratic Party of Kosovo, got 21%, while the Democratic League of Kosovo 17%, and the AAK is 7%. So that means in the end of the day that no one has majority. You have to know that in the Kosovo Assembly there is 10 seats for the Serbian minority and 10 seats for the non-Serb minority parties. As the Serbs, it seems that the Serbian list, which was the main Belgrade-supported Serbian party in Kosovo, got 9 seats. And Nenad Rasic, his party, got 1. Rasic is with Kurti, so he is supporting Kurti, while the Serbian list is most probably against. So that's why...
it's because it's actually mandatory that there is a Serbian representation within the government. So the Albanians and Kurti did this sort of trick that they don't want to work with official Serbian Belgrade-sponsored party, Srpska lista, so they they picked on and promoted one guy and his party, who's supposedly a nice guy, like an expert in what he does, and he always gets this one parliamentary seat, which is his, and he is made the Serbian guy within the Kosovar government.
Yes. You are totally right. So that's why Rašić is an important player in Kosovo's politics, and we have to talk a little bit about the non-Serbian minorities as well, as there are some of them who are clearly against Kurti and some of them who is always with Kurti. Most probably there are 3 or 4 MPs against Kurti and his party, while the rest is supporting him. So if we count the numbers in the end of the day, that means nor Kurti nor the opposition has the proper numbers to form a government.
This interests me actually. Which minority supports Kurti? Because there is Egyptian minority which has 4 MPs. There is Bosniak minority with 3 seats, Gorani with 1 seat, and the Roma with 2 seats. So which of them support the Kurti?
The Gorani and the Roma are most of the cases with the Serbian list, so they are acting together. The Egyptians always supporting Kurti, while the Bosniaks, it depends the party or the party representative. So there are 2 main Bosniak parties, one led by Emilija Recepi and the other one led by Duda Baje. Duda Baje is not, she doesn't have a kind of good relation with Kurti himself, so that's a question mark if she supports. Emilija Recepi had a position in the previous Kurti's government. She was a minister, so she was supporting Kurti at that time, but there have been some rumors that they had some clashes. That's unconfirmed, but most of the cases the minority is acting in their interest. And what is the minority's interest? To be close to the current government.
It's actually quite interesting because there is overall 120 MPs and 20 of those reserved for the minorities, even though that Kosovo, I think, is 92% made of Albanians and just 8% is minorities. So basically they get bigger share in the parliament that should be granted according to census. So that was basically makes Kosovo multicultural state by definition.
Yes, and from time to time there are some statements from civil sector, from some politicians, from some parties that they should review this system, because everyone knows that the number of the Serbs who's living in Kosovo is decreasing and decreased a lot in the last couple of years. So many times there's a question why they still have so high representative in the assembly itself. We'll see if someone would change this system, but I guess as it's kind of protection for the minorities and minority rights granted by the international community itself, it would be very sensitive to dealing with this question.
And I have one more point to make. As you said, the previous president, Vjosa Osmani, according to many polls, she was one of the most popular politicians in Kosovo. I have seen her very often at international events representing Kosovo. She was head of many feminist movements, and at least for me, it would seem that she would stir up the waters of politics, because when she quit as a president, she joined LDK, the opposition party, and immediately became sort of its face. She became one of the leading figures of the party, and they didn't make much gains. I think they gained just 4 seats, which is not that many. Why? What happened?
That's my opinion, that people voted more on the party and not on the candidates, on the person. So maybe many who likes Vjosa Osmani as a person or as a politician don't like LDK as a party. A couple of months ago, there have been in the news that Osmani's plan was to form a new party, but maybe the time phrase was very short to do this, and somehow they managed with the LDK leadership to find the common way and to run for the elections together. But yes, you are right. So I guess inside the LDK, people thought that their popularity would increase much more than 4%. So I guess it's a big question mark for the future. If after this result Osmani remains in the party, if she remains, if there would be some clashes inside the party for the presidency, that's clear that now Osmani is the strong man of one of the strong men of the party. So she would be the number one inside. While there is Lumir Abdjic, the current president of the party, who wants to hold his position. And as well there is Perparim Rama, the mayor of Pristina, who's trending to be a strong man inside. So we will see, but I won't surprise if there would be some kind of internal clashes in the party in the upcoming months for the leadership or for the presidency. So maybe if Vjosa Osmani would be the president, that she's popularity would pull the party's popularity as well.
And what's for the future? What's the time frame? We have just had yet another parliamentary election. The presidential one was held in March. Currently there is an extraordinary or temporary president in place. Do we expect in the coming months and until the end of the year?
The acting president's mandate ends in October. So that means that till October there could be some kind of political solution. First, we have to wait for the final results of the election and the confirmation by the Central Elections Committee. After, the next step would be the formation of the assembly and to elect a speaker. That was a very difficult case after the last elections. So we'll see if there would be kind of compromise between the parties to elect a speaker this time, because if the assembly formed, if there is a speaker, they could step forward towards forming the government. Now there have been some statements from the Constitutional Court that you have to know that in Kosovo's constitution there are some controversial chapters. So almost every political parties could use the constitution for their favor, and there are always debates regarding the constitution. So what I wanted to mention, that from the Constitutional Court there was kind of statement that they are not sure if the acting president would be able to appoint prime minister. So there are some thoughts that first there should be the formation of the assembly, try to elect the new president, and after forming the government itself. But it's still unclear, as many things in Kosovo these days. I'm a little bit afraid that exactly nothing really changed in the last couple of months. So if it would be impossible to form a government, or maybe possible to form the government, but it's impossible again to find the president to elect, the country could stuck in this long-term political crisis, which one internally and externally as well harm Kosovo and the citizens as well. So, for example, the economy of the country is in kind of worse conditions than it was before, and it's partly because of the lack of political stability.
I can join in on that. For example, Kosovo is one of the worst air pollutants in Europe. Its share of coal production to other sources is 90%, and it has one of the worst polluting power plants in Europe. And those things were supposed to change until 2030, and those plans are currently on hold. And population suffers because of it. I mean, there can be no big investments, no big big deals signed just in this one sector, and this applies to everything. I guess some things can be worked out if you have like really strong institutions which work with foreign institutions, as is in the case of EU, but Kosovo does not have that luxury.
Yeah, and the international community trying to push forward the local parties and politicians to find a solution for this situation. As I see nowadays, they don't want to interfere as much who should be the new prime minister, who should form a government, just to have a government to be formed and have someone to cooperate with, because everyone says that without a government for a long term, that's impossible to solve those issues as well you have mentioned. And exactly, if there is no government, there is no dialogue with Serbia, no recognition for Kosovo for a longer time. That means lack of investment, lack of international relations or connections in a sense, and Kosovo is a country that really needs the foreign investments.
Thank you for the very in-depth, thorough description of the ongoing crises and some predictions, and also how all of this affects people on the ground, regular citizens. So this was my guest, Márton Nikowitz-Holló from the Institute of International Affairs of Hungary. It was lovely to have you on air, and I cannot wait to have you on again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was meant to be here.
So bye-bye everyone, and hoping to see you next time, listen to you next time on Balkan Chronicles. Bye-bye.